A few days ago, I came across a couple of stories that might make you think that the ULEZ charges and associated fines are even more of a financial insult than some people think they are already. And both of these stories have quite severe consequences, so I strongly urge you to listen all the way to the end to hear them both. And if I could ask you one thing just before we get going, hit that subscribe button, because over 60% of you don't, and it's the one thing I do ask of you. Thank you. The first was when somebody drove through the ULEZ zone for the first time, not realizing they were in the zone or what it was, and obviously received a fixed penalty charge. Now, they were advised by Transport for London to set up autopay to recognise their number plate, as many have criticised over the recent months, and so that it would automatically debit the charge from their account if their vehicle was recognised driving in the zone, thus avoiding said penalty charge notices. So they did that. They set it up and they thought that would be that. If ever they drive within the zone again, all will be fine and nothing will go wrong. Famous last words. A few months later, they noticed over £700 debited from their account by Transport for London. Now, a long story short, it transpires that the automatic number plate recognition system had misidentified their vehicle with another. One was a Mercedes and the other was an Audi, all because of the placing of the screw on the number plate to make the number plate look like theirs. Now, that might sound all very straightforward, but obviously it took some persistence on the part of the vehicle owner, the person that was debited over £700 for these fees, and eventually they got that sorted out. But I can only imagine if by quirk of fate the vehicle was the same manufacturer and same type of vehicle, what kind of an argument they might have had to dispute that this just isn't the same vehicle, or worse still, that it's cloned or something else and they didn't get the correct result from Transport for London. So this is just one warning with the auto pay system. Now, a lot of people don't like having auto pay because they like to manually do it, but then some people forget. So that's why some people set up auto pay. So it depends on which side of the fence that you fall. Do you prefer to have it automated and deal with any problems like this one if they arise, or do you prefer to do it manually? Most of these things I do myself, but I am meticulous at making sure these things get done. I'm a spreadsheet fanatic. But that choice is down to you. But that is the first story and the first warning that I would urge you to consider when setting up auto pay. Make sure you check your bank accounts frequently for charges that are coming out that you haven't really incurred. This might be especially difficult to isolate if you are indeed driving within the zone regularly, but you don't check how many times and you don't check how much they've taken from your account. It might well be that these quirks happen more frequently than you think, and you are charged for many more times than you've actually driven in the zone. Now, whilst this situation sounds like it was relatively straightforward to sort out, although it did take some time, the second story is likely to have even more devastating and probably unavoidable consequences. But before we get into that, this video is in part sponsored by emissions.co.uk, because if you've owned or leased a diesel vehicle between 2008 and 2018 of any one of these manufacturers, then you may be the victim of fraudulent misrepresentation, because many vehicle manufacturers stand accused of installing software and or hardware which will manipulate the emissions readings when the vehicle is in a test state. Think MOT, and they stick that thing on the exhaust to test the emissions of the vehicle. Some of these vehicles allegedly have software and hardware set up to detect the vehicle in a test state and output different emissions readings than they might otherwise do so out on the road, up to 40 times less than they would actually output when they're out on the road. Now, if these allegations turn out to be true and you own such a vehicle, then you might be able to join one of the actions against these manufacturers and claim compensation. It's very quick, very easy, and free to check at the link in the description below. You put your vehicle registration number in, they will tell you whether you are eligible for a claim, and if you are, they have no-win, no-fee lawyers standing by to help you. So I can tell you that I am part of one of these myself, and as I always say, I would never recommend something to you that I wouldn't consider using myself. So I have to say that I feel particularly disappointed about this, and if these allegations are true, then it's only right that people are due compensation. So check out emissions.co.uk in the link below, and now let me tell you about that other story. This was actually a story that I picked up a few days ago on TikTok. This chap was receiving between 5 and 10 fines through the post from Transport for London for not paying the ULEZ charges each day, and has racked up what seems like hundreds of these charges over several weeks or months. Now, the problem that I can foresee that he's going to have, which I would urge you all to avoid, is that the enforcement process for these fines is fairly strict. If you don't pay the ULEZ charge and you drive within the zone, then you are going to receive, if you are caught, a penalty charge notice. And then you will have 28 days within which to either pay the penalty charge notice or to challenge it. A challenge might be, for example, it wasn't you, you weren't there, the vehicle's mistaken, or some other reason. If you pay it within 14 days, then it's going to be discounted by 50%. But the one thing that you really should not do, as this chap did, is ignore it. Now, he's ignored hundreds of them by the look of it, and so this is going to have even more serious consequences as this moves forward. If you do not pay the penalty charge notice within the requisite 28 days, each and every fine is going to increase to £270. Simple maths is going to tell you that if you've got 10 of these, that's going to rise to £2,700, and if you've got 20 or 30 or more of them, it might end up pushing you into a point of bankruptcy. It's also worth bearing in mind that if you haven't paid it or challenged it within the 28 days, you will lose the opportunity to challenge it by making representations, leaving you only with the opportunity to make a statutory declaration, either to the effect that you didn't receive it or it wasn't you that was driving in that zone. This all comes about with the issuance of a charge certificate, and if this is not paid within 14 days of being served, then it's likely to be registered as an unpaid debt at the Traffic Enforcement Centre, which also incurs a debt registration fee. All the while, these fees are going up and accumulating. After this, you'll be sent an order for recovery, not to be confused with a county court judgment, and doesn't affect your credit rating, but it will continue to incur fees. The next step is that you're likely to hear from enforcement agents, more commonly referred to as bailiffs, once they've sought a warrant of execution. Now, contrary to popular belief, you will not ordinarily be sent a copy of the warrant, and nor does it need to be signed by a judge with a wet ink signature. I've covered that in previous videos, but watch the comment section go crazy. Now, every time they write to you or visit your address or take any action, there is also likely to be an associated fee accruing on the account and the outstanding debt. Now, in very rare cases, there might be a situation where the original PCN or PCNs were incorrectly issued, or it just wasn't you, or you were in hospital or out of the country, your car was stolen, and all of these kind of things. In very, very rare cases, you might be able to demonstrate to the enforcement agents that you shouldn't have to pay these fines and fees. Although in most, if not all cases, you're likely to have to pay them. But the one thing that I would say to you all, and universal guidance, is please don't ignore these things. The only thing that happens when you ignore a problem like this is that it tends to get worse, because the laws will generally favour the issuance and the collection of these fees, because the default process just has to have a way of working its way forward. Now, this is not me saying I agree with the system. This is not me saying I like the system. I'm only here to tell you what it is. I get my fair share of criticism in the comments for somehow supporting or being part of the system. That's not the way it is. I'm just telling you what the law is, what the law supports, what the processes are, and how you can best avoid them. So don't shoot the messenger, but these are serious situations that you really should avoid. So please do take both of those stories on board. Remember to check out your vehicle and the link for emissions.co.uk in the description below. Make sure you subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.